There you have it, the official opening of the 7th administration, the opening of Parliament for this new dispensation. And President Cyril Ramaphosa there taking us through what the line of march is going to be for his cabinet. And of course, everyone in the country being asked to be weaver birds and weave this nation together. So Mfundo and Mzansi has joined us here. Very interesting, but I must just note at the end there, Mzansi, this is where it takes a lot longer, or it used to take a lot longer for the House to quieten down, because the ANC had an overwhelming majority and they would sing, you know, in praise of the president after delivering the speech. Quieten down very soon this time around.
Well, it is a different speech. I mean, something that we haven't witnessed before, and you could see even the tone, the language, and some of the focus areas are quite different. You know, we are so used to, even when you are not reading the speech, you already know when he's moving towards closure. Some of the things that he will start speaking about, he will start touching on the international issues. And then that's when you know that it's about then to be close. But you didn't hear any of that.
There they are bursting into song.
It's late now.
We spoke too soon, but nevertheless.
And it's subdued. It's subdued. But Mzansi, you make a very good point, because generally we knew when he moves to foreign policy, he's rounding up his speech. Nothing on foreign policy.
In fact, Sakina, he was, I think, right at the beginning, said, we have decided that we are not putting the interest of the political party, but we will be looking at the interest of South Africa. It's South Africa first.
But I think it's important to talk about the 3 strategic priorities, because you spoke about driving inclusive growth as well as job creation. The second was reduce poverty and deal with the high cost of living, which I thought was quite important, and then build a capable and ethical state. I mean, he spoke at length, particularly on the first 2. Here, when talking about driving inclusive growth, and even when talking about the cost of living, if you heard there, he says something quite important I'm thinking throughout the week we'll speak of, which is expanding the number of products that are exempt from VAT. This was a call that the Democratic Alliance had been making for the longest time, that add to that basket of the products that are exempt. And I want us to talk about that at length, but I believe my colleague Bulelani already is standing by to give us reaction. Bulelani, it's over to you on the floor.
Well, thank you so much, Mfundo. We are going to be taking reactions from the different political parties. And first up is Wayne Thring, the Deputy President of the ACDP. Mr. Thring, firstly, the President's address, does it take the country in the right direction?
Well, I think let me firstly state that the ACDP is not a part of the GNU, and we certainly wish the President and those parties and members of the GNU well. South Africa needs a turnaround strategy. In the past, the President has actually spoken about structural reform, but we haven't seen, in fact, we've seen the opposite of structural reform. This is another lifeline with the GNU, in a sense, that has been thrown to the President. Many promises have been made, the President indicating that he's going to do things like growing the number of classrooms. The President speaks about inclusive economic growth. The President speaks about reducing the cost of living. The President speaks about a capable state. But what we are seeing, particularly in our committees, as we've been dealing with budget votes, are government entities that are now struggling because of a lack of finances, and they are going to be unable to develop and run out their particular programs. So what we are, as the ACDP, going to be looking at is how is the President going to do this, and is he going to keep to his word? When he speaks about early childhood development, is he going to keep to his word? When he speaks about building classrooms where there's water and flushing toilets for our children, is he going to keep to his word? When he speaks about fighting crime, is he going to keep to his word? And when the issue of Phala Phala is going to be raised, and we speak about ethical leaders, will the President be one of those ethical leaders, even on the issue of Phala Phala?
All right, thank you so much, Wayne Thring, the Deputy President of the ACDP. For more reaction, we cross over to Samkele.
Bulelani, we've got Mzansi and EFF leader Julius Malema. I'm going to start with Mzansi. Your response to the speech of the President? I think it was a good speech. However, the proof is in the action. Like he said, we need clear action timelines. The priorities were right, but we've heard all of this before. What we need is clear funded commitments in the medium-term budget policy statement so that we know that the things that he promises are going to be done. Secondly, from each of those departments, we need to know what the specific actions are going to be, because it is in those things that Parliament can do its work and hold the executive accountable. The things that need to be fixed in South Africa are not complicated, and he mentioned all of them in his speech. However, we need action, we need urgency, and we need a change of thinking and a change of attitude from the executive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Songezazib. I'm going to bring in Mr. Julius Malema, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters and part of the Progressive Caucus. Mr. Malema, your response as the Economic Freedom Fighters to the speech of the President of the Republic?
Well, this was a waste of state resources, because there was nothing new that the President had said. Actually, he's always coming with a new identity of his office. Just in February, we were in Swallows. Today is a different thing altogether. It's very clear that the President has got no plan to transform South Africa for the better. Nothing about international relations, because that is a point of disagreement for this GNU. Nothing about the judiciary, and nothing about the land. He can't concretely say this is the amount of hectares we are going to give to our people. A pure lie that he created 2 million jobs, which we have never seen as the people of South Africa. So he spoke to us in February. He speaks to us on the same useless things that he's non-committal. If you look at that parliament today, the happiest people is white people in that parliament. The happiest people is the DA, because it's the biggest winner out of this GNU sellout government. President Ramaphosa has once more sold out South Africa like he did in 1994 when he did not attend Nelson Mandela's inauguration, which today he speaks very highly of him for opportunistic reasons. So we as the EFF are going to consolidate the progressive forces in this parliament and make sure that we hold this government accountable. We give this government just a year, and if it doesn't collapse within a year, it will not go beyond 2 years. We can guarantee South Africans a progressive government is coming in, which will transform the land, nationalize the banks, and ensure that there is enough jobs for all our people and fight poverty.
One of the key issues of the EFF manifesto when it comes to the beneficiation of the minerals of the country was touched upon. What is your view on the beneficiation of the minerals as exposed to exporting road dust and our minerals unbeneficiated?
He has spoken about beneficiation since 2017, when the ANC agreed to nationalize the Reserve Bank and ensured that the people of South Africa benefit from the minerals of our country. It's not for the first time he speaks about beneficiation. He is not going to be a part of people who are going to initiate beneficiation in South Africa, because exporting is to the benefit of his masters, and therefore he will never support beneficiation in the country. He's just speaking about it because he has been president for the past 5 years, he has been deputy president for the past 10 years. Why hasn't he beneficiated in South Africa? Today he's telling us about a solar plant that has given us 250 megawatts, but just recently we have just received 800 megawatts from Eskom. And why is he not speaking about what our own state company is able to give us, but instead he wants to promote the independent power producers at the expense of Eskom? So you can see that the man that is not for the state. The man is for the private sector. The man is for multinational companies. But what makes me happy is that you can see that is a wounded buffalo. We told you South Africa will eat this elephant piece by piece, and you saw it for yourself today. That confidence and that arrogance of February has gone through the window, and today the man speaks like a man who has got no confidence and belief in what he's talking about. I won't be shocked tomorrow if I'm told that speech was written by Helen Zille, because the DA kept on clapping until the last full stop.
On the issue of the formation of the state-owned holdings company, basically replacing Department of Public Enterprises, I know that your Treasurer General, Ompilo Moate, also the MP, has spoken extensively about public enterprises, just on the state holdings company.
Well, they have collapsed the state-owned enterprises, and therefore they can't be telling us they are going to establish this or that after they've collapsed the state-owned enterprises. They create a problem and then come to us and say we'll solve the problem after creating the problem. We must first strengthen our own state-owned enterprises. If we want to grow the economy, if we want to create jobs, there is no economic development and any developmental state that is led by a private sector. It must be a state-led economic development.
You said you'll defend the ANC in Gauteng. I know Herman Mashaba has been negotiating with Panyaza Lesufi, Tada Morero and TK Ngiza. Will you also be forming part in that particular arrangement on the reconstitution of the metros in Gauteng?
They can go ahead. We don't have any kind of arrangement with the ActionSA or anyone of that sort. We don't have an arrangement with the ANC. We are saying to you, if the ANC comes and the DA wants to oppose them, we'll defend the ANC in Gauteng because of the stance they took. That was a brave stand. That was an act of defiance to this nonsensical neoliberal coalition led by the DA. This is not led by the ANC. Helen Zille is the crafter of everything that is happening here. So Gauteng said we are not going to be Makabane ka Helen Zille, and therefore refuse that and will support them because that is a brave move. The ANC should have opted for minority government if it did not want to work with progressive forces. Instead, they decided to go in bed with reactionary forces who still have bloods of our people on their hands.
Thank you very much, Mushabi. We shall meet on Thursday. That is the leader of the economic freedom fighters, who is leader of the EFF, Julius Sillo Malema, basically saying they are not happy with the president and saying that they will essentially not form part of the national dialogue. Over to you, Lulama Maja.
Thank you very much, Sam. I am joined by ATM leader Vuyolwethu Zungula. The president has spoken for the first time in this 7th parliament. As the ATM, what are you drawing from the speech?
Utatu Ramaphosa ulichule. He's very good at speaking, number one, particularly because he knows Okoba, the people that are there, particularly in the media space, do not interrogate what he's saying now versus what he said in the past. For example, he spoke about social contract as if it's a new thing. He spoke about it in 2019. He spoke about inclusive growth. So he speaks about all of these big themes, these big words, as if it is something that is new, because he knows that people are not going to interrogate whether, when he spoke about it in the past, was there any material difference in terms of the lives of the people? Because the results are there to show that unemployment is increasing, poverty is increasing, inequality is widening, and practically people are not enjoying their lives in South Africa. So in our view as the ATM, uthethile utata ewe, but akho nto ayithethileyo.
So in other words, you are saying that the promises he made in the previous administration, he never met?
Yeah, he spoke about a bullet train, for example. There's no bullet train. He spoke about a smart city. There's no smart city. He spoke about creating jobs. Unemployment is going up. So what he knows is that, yes, he's going to speak, make promises, but he knows that majority of journalists are not going to interrogate what he's promising versus what he had promised before. Remember, he started making sonars in 2018, beginning of the year in 2018. We are now 6 years or 7 years later, and I think this is his 8th sonar that was presenting today. However, look at the lives of South Africans from the time he came on as president versus now. From the context of unemployment, poverty, the cost of living, you can clearly see that under his leadership, South Africa is failing. So he knows very well ukuba akazuhlalutya ukuba lento ayithethayo ingaba ibambekile na. That is why enjoya uthetha jonga namhlanje udathetha ngotata uMandela as if abantu batya utata uMandela. Abantu abazutya tata uMandela because akakho utata. But he uses the legacy katata uMandela as a means of ukusithela abantu so that abantu bacifama all is well, whereas not all is well.
Thank you very much. That was ATM leader Vuyolwethu Zungula. Let me link to my colleague Bulelani.
Thank you, Lulama. From the chief whip of the FF Plus is now the leader of the FF Plus, Dr. Corné Mulder. A lot of anticipation around plans for job creation and growing the economy. Did the president appease the FF Plus?
I think to a large extent the President made all the right points. Quite clearly the commitment is there. First of all, a very strong commitment to the government of national unity that we welcome, obviously. And if one listened carefully to what the President basically said was that at the center of this whole initiative would stand the driving of strong economic growth. And I think that's very important. To us it's very important. I think that's the essence of where we need to go. The question I need to ask, unfortunately, is this. If you really analyze the speech of the President, most of these things have been said in the past. It's not new. And the question immediately arises, why was it necessary first to defeat the ruling party, to get the government of national unity to at last now take these things forward? I was concerned during the speech that the President basically referred to the program of the government of national unity, but in the end he said the right things when he referred to the national dialogue, because it's quite clear that political parties themselves will not be able to achieve these goals. Although we prescribe to these things and we think they're absolutely exactly what we need, if we do not get all of South Africa involved, especially the business community, civil society, and have a complete national dialogue, this will remain dreams, and I think it's important to implement that. I think we're on the right road.
The question is, how is he going to achieve this? Of course, as you've said, we've heard this before, but we're seeing very little results on the ground. How is he going to do this? You are part and parcel of the GNU.
Yes, you're absolutely right. As I've said, these things are not new. I think two things made a difference. I think there's a realization by the ruling party that they cannot do it alone, and that's why we've moved into the government of national unity. And the national dialogue must be a process where we get everybody in South Africa enthusiastically on board in terms of turning this country around, getting growth. The President made the point that for 15 years we almost had no growth. So dreams alone is not good enough. We need to make this thing work. We are committed to make a success of it, and I hope that everybody else will be on board as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Corné Mulder, the leader of the FF Plus here in Parliament. For more reaction, we'll cross back to you, Samgel.
Indeed, Bulelani, I am with the leader of the official opposition, Dr. Mandlakai John Hlophe. Dr. Hlophe, just the essence, the response of the MK party of the president's speech tonight?
Well, the starting point is to say President Ramaphosa is let me put it this way, he is a sophisticated liar, right? And who can lie with a very straight face. He knows no bounds when it comes to lying. The suggestion that his government has created more than 2 million jobs, we're all South Africans, we know that is a lie. And I fail to see on what conceivable grounds he can justify the GNU. In circumstances where there is no crisis in the country to begin with, the GNU was a deliberate and desperate attempt by the ANC of Ramaphosa to retain power. That's what it's all about. And everybody is excited because of the Blue Lives Brigade. We are truthful to our voters. We said all along we are not going to be part of an ANC government that is led by Cyril Ramaphosa. For that reason, we have nothing to do with the GNU, and today we launched our own forum, the progressive parties who are outside the GNU, trying to strengthen our own opposition.
Were there any aspects of the three priority areas the president spoke about that you were happy about as the MK when you look at the issue of beneficiation of the raw minerals?
Well, I know he's not telling the truth. He hasn't done it all along. Why would he start doing it now? What makes you think he would start doing it now? He has been in power for more than 5 years. Why would he start making that now?
What are some of the key priority areas do you as the MK party when it comes to the debate next week that you will be pushing across?
What we need is an agrarian revolution in this country. Agriculture is there. What we need is land that must be made available to our people. It will solve so many of our problems. It's an agrarian revolution that is needed. And also we need to develop infrastructure, particularly in rural areas. We live in rural areas. I don't think Ramaphosa has been to any rural area.
Thank you.
He's a man who lives in the city. You can see him. And I don't know who prepared the speech for him.
Who do you think prepared the speech?
Well, it was very clear it's the DA. That's why white South Africans were applauding when he was talking. It's the DA.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mandla Hlophe, who is the leader of the official opposition. Me and him have an engagement in about a month at your farm, right? We've got an engagement at your farm.
Sure.
That is Dr. Mandla Hlophe. They've got that particular engagement with him. Over to you, Lulama Manja.
I am joined by the IFP leader, Velenkosini Hlabisa. He's also COSATU minister. Let's start talk about the IFP. As the IFP, are you satisfied with what the president's message was tonight?
I am very satisfied as the leader of the IFP because the president, he laid out the roadmap which emanates from our discussion in the Cabinet Lekgotla. The IFP joined the Government of National Unity because we're hitting the call. People of South Africa said, you must work together. And when we joined the Government of National Unity, we made a commitment that we want to take our country forward. The president actually responded to that and called and consolidated our coming together that in the 7th administration, we must press a reset button. We must make a turning point in the history of our country in ensuring maximum development and change in how things are done in delivering services to our people. And he mentioned something very critical. If you want to see a meaningful development, there must be stability in the local government sphere. This also talks well to me as a minister of COSATU that every development will occur if there is stability in local government level. The conducive environment for investors, if local government is stable, the municipalities will be able to deliver services. They will be able to fix roads that are damaged with potholes. If the local government is stable, the foreign investors and business people will find courage to invest in our country and people will see a meaningful change. I want to make a commitment that as IFP, we will be working together in the Government of National Unity to bring change.
It means then that you have a difficult task ahead, as some of the municipalities we have seen coalitions not being stable. If the backbone of the economy is the municipalities where there must be stability, what are you going to do to bring stability, especially in those municipalities that are unstable due to coalition governments?
What is very good, there is one voice about ensuring stability. The 10 political parties in the Government of National Unity will filter down that working spirit, that attitude to all municipalities that are under coalition government, and we will be giving every support to struggling municipalities financially, administratively, to ensure that they showcase to bring change during the 7th administration at a provincial and national government level.
Thank you very much for your time. That was the IFP leader as well as COSATU Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa. With that, to my colleague Bulelani.
Thank you, Lulama. We now speak to Agriculture Minister as well as DA leader John Steenhuisen. The opposition parties are noting that you've been clapping right through to the last full stop. They're arguing this speech has got the DA policies inked on it.
Well, I think that what you've got is a government of national unity, and what was expressed this evening is a synthesis of what we want to do to rescue South Africa and to get our country onto a better trajectory. So yes, there were elements there that the DA has been calling for, things like expanding the VAT-free basket of goods, the deregulation of the fuel levy, turning South Africa into a construction site. These are all sort of things that the DA has been talking about for a while. And this is what you're going to see, and this is why we've gone into government, because we want to be part of building South Africa. It's very obvious now that we have a parliament with one side, people have come together to build. The president used the analogy this evening of the weaver birds working and cooperating together. And you've got on the other side those who want to break. They want to destroy the Constitution. They want to destroy our democratic institutions. They want to destroy the rule of law in the country. And that is the juxtaposition that now sits in our parliament. The DA has chosen deliberately to be on the side of the builders in the country because we believe that the voters in the last election didn't give any party a majority, and they did that for a reason. They said, we want you to cooperate, to work together in our interests, not in petty partisan interests, but in our interests. Our country faces enormous challenges. There's a huge task ahead of us, but we know that we've overcome many difficulties in the past, but we've only overcome those when we've come together as a nation.
The plans for job creation and growing the economy, will they take us far enough in terms of making a dent in the high levels of unemployment?
Well, absolutely, because you've got to grow the economy to create jobs. The growing economy is the rising tide that lifts all boats. And each of our departments are now going to have to focus on how do we maximize job creation. I see agriculture as a huge opportunity to absorb large amounts of unskilled South Africans who are unemployed. Agro-processing as well. And we need to turn each of our ministries into engine rooms of economic growth and job creation. I believe that the investment and the confidence now of the markets in South Africa, that we've averted a doomsday scenario and now have a government of national unity that's working together and cooperating with common purpose, has given the markets confidence that we are open for investment, we're serious about business, and we're pushing our reform agenda now into top gear so we can start to see the real impact on the ground amongst our citizens.
Thank you so much, John Steenhuisen, the DA leader as well as the Agriculture Minister. For more reaction, we'll cross back to you, Samgele.
Indeed, Bulelani, we've got the UDM Deputy President Mzansi. Mr. Kwankwa, just your response as the UDM to the speech of the President, knowing that you are effectively part of the GNU now.
Yeah, but I'm a party leader for the UDM in Parliament, so I have to focus on holding the GNU to account. No fear, without fear or favor or prejudice. The other issue is when I followed the speech from where I was sitting, it sounded more to me like a statement of intent, because the president did not give an account or a report of the work done in the last 5 years. You must remember that he was president of South Africa in the last 5 years. All that has happened now is that it's a new arrangement, but he's still the head of government. So I'd expected a bit of detail insofar as the work done in some of the gaps, but I think overall he was able to touch on the most important issues: reindustrialization of the South African economy, dealing with the energy constraints, trying to reignite growth, dealing with issues of unemployment, inequality and poverty in our country. But I suppose since there is no plan yet, the medium-term plan, development plan that he was talking about, it's still work in progress. Once that is actually brought to us, we'll be able to contribute to it, scrutinize it and see how it can actually be implemented effectively.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mzansi from the UDM. Mr. POSA leader Mmusi Maimane.
Yes,
Mr. Maimane, just your response on the speech of the President tonight?
Look, I think that many South Africans would not disagree on many of the ideals the President spoke about. These are things we've been speaking about in the last number of administrations and a number of years. So as I said through the speech, much of it I felt like I'd heard a lot of the information that the President was putting forward. The issue for government is not the plans, it's not these GNU type things. The issue for government is about implementation and accountability and financing for that. So tonight I wanted to hear more of a decisive, here's our goals, here's how you can measure against those goals. To defer them to the next Lekgotla is not good enough. The NDP says we need a 5% GDP growth. The President needed to commit to that. How do we finance around energy and logistics? That is vital, even though you can mention much of the plans around Transnet and Eskom have been put in place, but none of them have been realizable. Actually, the plans in the NDP, only 25% have ended up on annual performance plans. So for me, our job now is to say, now that we've solved for the politics, how do we move on to make sure that there's policy and a program of action that goes forward?
Thank you very much, Mr. Maimane. I'm just going to try and bring in the ANC spokesperson, Zuko Kodlimpi, but yeah, off he goes into the sunset. And essentially, that is the response of POSA leader Mmusi Maimane and also the leader of UDM, Mzansi, the Deputy President. Over to you, Lula Mancha.
Thank you very much, Samgele. I am joined by PAC leader as well as Minister of Land and Rural Development, Mzansi Nyonso. Mr. Nyonso, as the Minister in charge of Land and Rural Development, the President has spoken talking about how they are planning to stimulate economy, but it all starts with access to land and land ownership.
He even spoke about the fast tracking of title deeds so that our people can do business well. He even spoke about rural roads, which are part of rural development, which means in this department we are going to start our work tomorrow and make sure that land is redistributed and make sure that rural areas are developed. We must work hard and make sure that we stop the urbanization of our people from rural areas to the big cities to look for jobs. They must use the land they have where they stay. We must support them and make sure that they plow the land. We must make sure that they get fresh produce from where they stay and even have job opportunities, and that is going to work. We're happy with what you are saying.
There was also an outcry during the budget debate here in Parliament about the allocation to rural farmers. Some not even have cold storage for vegetables. Anything that you're going to do about that?
Yes, definitely. Some of the issues we are going to have to meet with the Minister of Finance together with the DG and talk to him and show him the realities that are faced by farmers, the realities that are faced by African people, the realities that are faced by farmers, small farmers. And you must also remember that as part of our responsibility, one of them is to make sure that military veterans get farms and land.
Thank you very much. That was PAC leader as well as the Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development, Mzansi Nyonso. With that, Bulelane, take it over.
Thank you so much, Lulama. Of course, the President clustering three themes in his speech around the issue of where government is going to focus, creating jobs and an inclusive economy, fighting poverty and the high cost of living, as well as building a capable state. Athol Trollip is the parliamentary leader for ActionSA. Thank you for joining me. These three themes that the President has highlighted, is that a good analysis of our country's challenges?
Well, first of all, I think he's missed the boat a little bit because I didn't hear any original thought. There's a lot of regurgitation of personas and, other parties. It looked like he picked up our manifesto and was reading it. So that's fine. He was obviously selling his new government of national unity. That's his responsibility. He's put this new government together. But we as South Africans wanted to hear forecasting on how he's going to grow the economy, how he's going to restore our really poor international reputation, about the fact that we're still grey-listed for poor financial management, for corruption. He mentioned very little about corruption and crime. You can't carry on doing the same thing expecting different outcomes. He spoke about revitalization of rail. The question is, why did they allow the rail to be vandalized and dismantled to the extent that it is? He said he's going to now start making local government sustainable, as if he woke up yesterday. Our local governments have been in shambles for years. He talked about going to eThekwini to make people proud of eThekwini again. He was in Nelson Mandela Bay just before the elections. He said he's going to stop the crime. He's going to get it under control. People are dying in Nelson Mandela Bay. Nelson Mandela Bay is now the crime city of the country. I'm afraid there's not much credibility there because the track record is very checkered. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's made new promises, and even if they sound like they come from our manifesto, we'll know what we expect. We talked about an opportunity fund. He talks about a sovereign fund. If the government doesn't have independent control of a sovereign fund, it'll get stolen blind, because our history tells us that this government under Cyril Ramaphosa especially likes to put their fingers into the cookie jar.
Can they handle, or can they continue to hold this government of national unity together?
Look, I hope they do, because, South Africans, we're better together, and we've become very polarized as a nation. So ActionSA doesn't want to see our country polarized. We're occupying a middle road. We're the opposition, and we're happy to play that role. So I think they've taken a better option going with this grand coalition or multi-party coalition, then the other option of going with the regressive caucus. They want to take us back to the days of Jacob Zuma and state capture. They want to, tinker with the constitution. So I think it's a better option. We wish them all the best, because South Africans often show over and over again that we're better together. But leadership requires, ethical leadership requires example, and we need to see leadership by example of working together and to break down this polarization on racial and ethnic lines. We've become a party of identity politics, and the only way you can break that is when South Africans see each other working together. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Thank you so much, Athol Throlip, the parliamentary leader for ActionSA, saying the party is adopting a centrist approach in this government of national unity. Samkele, it's back to you.
Indeed, Bulelani, but I'm going to bring in the former mayor of Johannesburg, who also happens to be the leader of ActionSA, Mr. Mashaba. Just your response to the revival of the metros as espoused by and said by the president in this particular speech, noting the discussions you are having around those particular metros in Gauteng.
Look, one thing we must accept as South Africa, that if the Gauteng metros are not going to function, South Africa will never really work. And that's really something that we as ActionSA feel that we need to really engage in ensuring that we can actually be the ones actually saving those metros, making sure that they work, because we've really tried over the last, ever since I left as the mayor of the city of Johannesburg in November of 2019, we've really seen one mayor after the other, including after the 2021 local government elections. We tried our best as ActionSA to form a stable government. Unfortunately, DA sabotaged the whole process. Right now, after these recent elections, the metros are in a paralysis, more especially Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, and we believe for us as ActionSA, with the numbers, with the massive numbers that we're sitting with, to sit back and not do anything about it, we will be actually not only be failing our country, we'll be failing future generations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Herman Mashaba. We'll move around with other interviews. We had spoken to Athol Throlip just before we spoke to you now, but thank you very much for this particular session. I'm going to bring in Zuko Kodlimpi, spokesperson of the ANC, or the Chief Whip, but let's speak to you, Mr. Kodlimpi. The essence, your response to the speech of the president. Are you happy as the African National Congress?
As the African National Congress, we're quite happy. It is reflective of the thrust of the ANC manifesto. It's reflective of the statement of intent of the GNU. It also outlines what the government must do on critical areas of delivery. Spoke very specifically about the problems of local government and what we need to do to deal with that issue. It spoke very impressively about the need to recalibrate the South African economy, especially focusing on industrialization and manufacturing. It spoke about the problems of policing that we've got to tackle. So broadly speaking, the address by the president was quite reflective of the issues that are burning South Africa. And of course, the national dialogue. We need all South Africans to put their shoulder on the wheel in mapping out what is it that South Africa should do, and different social partners must commit to specific tasks that they are willing to perform in order to fit into that national vision.
What is going to be the methodology of this particular national dialogue that you seek to embark on, which has been proposed by former President Thabo Mbeki as well, and a number of foundations alongside the Thabo Mbeki Foundation?
The modalities of it are still going to be worked out, but the substance of it is simple. You want the broadest cross-section of South African society. So you want the foundations of the senior leadership of South Africa, but you also want grassroots structures, community organizations, civil society formation, NGOs. You want organized political formations as well to come to the fore. You want the student movement. You want the church itself. You want virtually all social agents who can say, we have a stake in South Africa, we are prepared to commit to its future, and we have something to say about that vision. So what modality that will take, it will be mapped out between government and other social partners who have views about how it must be done. But it's urgent, it must be done, not in 6 months, not in 3 months if possible. It must be done as soon as possible.
Is there a divergence in the GNU, particularly on South Africa's foreign affairs policy? There was nothing in the speech of the president on these international relations issues, knowing how vociferous you were on the Palestine-Israeli war, on the Russia-Ukraine war as well.
In fact, the president did speak about our foreign policy, but focused specifically on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement about building a better Africa and a better world. On the front of international relations, especially the Palestinian question, there is no divergence in the GNU, because if you recall, all the political parties agreed that South Africa's foreign policy will remain rooted in progressive internationalism, a commitment to human rights, a commitment to peace, a commitment to a politics of anti-war. On those grounds, there is no divergence. Yes, some political parties within the GNU had expressed contradictory positions to what the South African government had raised. But the underlying principle cannot be faulted. And if anybody has a different view, they know what the GNU statement of intent says about reaching sufficient consensus or moving back against it, and there's a deadlock mechanism that tells us what to do if you want to change on policy. So as far as that is concerned, South Africa's foreign policy remains intact, it remains coherent, our position on South-to-South cooperation remains as it is, our BRICS commitments remain as they are, our solidarity with the people of Palestine remains as it is, our case in the ICJ against the State of Israel remains as it is, our bilateral relationship with the United States of America remains as it is, our bilateral relationship with the United Kingdom, with the EU, all of that remains as it is. So essentially, South Africa's non-aligned stance, but its commitment to broad cooperation with all state actors in international relations, but also its commitment to a solidarity politics with the South, it remains unchanged. It will remain like that. And the President did not have to explain much on that because there's no basis to worry about it changing.
Mr. Kolhimbi, when you look as the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, particularly around beneficiation, what are some of the plans that you have as DTI on the issue of beneficiation of South Africa's raw minerals as opposed to exporting raw dust, gold, platinum as it is, titanium as it is, iron ore as it is, instead of beneficiating it?
So two things, during the budget vote, the Minister of Trade and Industry did explain this point. We need to first remove the binding constraints to productivity, solve the energy problems, solve the rail problems, but also deal with much more strategic policy issues like what? We are now thinking about reviewing the tariff regime of the South African logistics network. You've got to lower the cost of transporting finished products as opposed to having a low cost of exporting only raw commodities. But the other issue is that we are now discussing a transversal policy coordination that combines the mandates of mining, the mandate of the DTIC, the mandate of the SOEs in order to have a coherent state policy that empowers beneficiation and improving our manufacturing capability in South Africa. So that position that the President was outlining today about beneficiation and reducing our export of raw minerals is consistent with departmental policy and the work that we'll be doing in this 5-year term.
In 1 second, will the hearing of former Jacob Zuma be physical next week?
No, it will be virtual. We released a statement to that effect yesterday.
So you're not allowing for any physical engagement?
It is a virtual thing. It will be virtual as it was virtual yesterday. Even the pre-trial hearing today between the representative of former President Jacob Zuma and the NTC was virtual. The session next week on the 23rd on Tuesday will be virtual at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zukoko Zimpe, the spokesperson of the ANC. Over to you, Bulelani, with Matthew Parks of COSATU.
Thank you very much, Samkele. I am joined by the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Dean Macpherson. Mr. Macpherson, the President spoke about in this administration, creation of jobs, stimulating the economy. And I guess your department, Public Works, is key in generating money from the buildings that are being rented, as well as on infrastructure. What are the key issues that were pointing to you from the speech?
Well, I really took heart in the President saying that he wants to turn South Africa into a construction site. That's what I took to the Cabinet Lekgotla last weekend. It's what I've been talking about for the last 2 weeks, and I think that the President's spot on that we need to use infrastructure development to grow our economy and create jobs. The other key observation by the President was about using Infrastructure South Africa to be a central focal point for infrastructure planning, packaging and delivery. Because they're able to attract financing from both domestic and foreign sources to be able to match the funding from Treasury. So that's going to be really key. But he also wants Infrastructure South Africa to be able to look at infrastructure in a holistic manner and way in which we don't have this fragmentation of infrastructure. So that's really going to be key. I also really support the President's call around fighting back against the construction mafia, absolutely key as they continue to try and hold back projects. Of course, we aren't as excited about NHI and the discussions around BE, so we're still going to have some discussions and talks within cabinets and within the GNU about how we're going to find each other, but there seems to be a commitment to do so, and that is at least welcomed.
Thank you very much. With that, let me hand over to my colleague Bulelani.
Thank you, Lulama. Of course, Labour has also been watching on the sidelines. COSATU is here with me, the national spokesperson. Matthew Parks, should the workers rejoice or be sad after the speech?
Look, I think we're pleased. He spoke to the issue we've asked government to speak to, respecting workers' rights, improving their living and their working conditions, fixing the state, giving support to ESCOM to end load shedding, fixing transit and metro rail so we can unlock the economy so workers can get to work on time, intervening in municipalities where there have been real problems of paying workers, collapsing municipal services, investing in public services which workers depend upon, and also specifically issue we'd also push hard for, like expanding the presidential promise stimulus to help young people enter the labour market, taking the SOD grant and transform into a universal basic income grant so you don't leave anybody behind in society. He spoke very firmly in support of the national health insurance about rolling it out. So I think we don't have any fault with the issues he spoke to. It's what issue that we've been calling for. Progressive issues can have a huge impact on the economy. What I think key for us is that when we get to the budget speech in October in Parliament, Treasury mustn't misbehave. They mustn't pickpocket these progressive objectives and cut them to the bone. We need to see the resources, the rands and cents being allocated to it. We need to see very clear timeframes for when are we going to implement them, eradicating the school pit latrine, for example. That we need to see, but also we need to see Parliament playing its role in holding the executive accountable for implementation, because the commitments are good, they're progressive, they're what we ask for. What we really need to see for workers to be happy to see implementation on the ground.
On the issue of this government of national unity, a lot of these political parties that are on the opposition benches are saying that we've heard all of these plans before, but we've seen very few deliverables.
So that's what needs to happen, because I don't think any sober person can fault the progressive objectives of a national health insurance, of comprehensive social security. And what we need to really see to say it can move with speed, because at times government has very progressive policies. We allocate money in Parliament to it. Then you find municipalities which are so dysfunctional, returning monies unspent to Treasury at the end of the year. And that's a crisis. We can't afford to have that. Not only have an unemployment rate of 42%, when we have entrenched levels of poverty, of inequality, of crime and corruption. But I think also to be fair to government and to the President, we've seen real progress in many critical areas, from ending load shedding to rebuilding transit. We've begun to see some progress in that regard. We've seen remarkable turnarounds within the South African Revenue Service, where not so long ago it was subject to state capture. Revenue was collapsing. We're now seeing a remarkable turnaround because government invested in competent management, hired additional staff, invested in the capacity. So if we can replicate that model across the state, then we can turn things around. But what we don't have is a luxury of time. Society is correctly impatient, is correctly irritated, and they really want to see government delivering.
Matthew Parks, thank you so much. He is the national spokesperson for COSATU. For more reaction, we'll cross back to you, Samkele.
Well, Bulelani Wa with the leader, Gayton McKenzie, here just to get an essence of Ons Baiza's response to this address by the President. Mr. McKenzie, just your response from the President?
One of the best speeches by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Very pragmatic, very futuristic. And what I like the most is that he acknowledged where we lack as government, like for instance in the metros, like in local government. But he's also given us how is he going to fix that. This is one of the best speeches by the President. The GNU is going to fly. We are that weaver bird that he spoke about. And I can tell you, we got our ducks in a row. And when he said that South Africa is going to look, you're going to see yellow plant everywhere. It's going to look like a construction site. I nearly stood up and clapped, and I'm very excited.
Is this GNU going to last? The EFF says it's going to last a year, maximum 2 years?
The EFF said they are the government in waiting. For 5 years, they've been telling us they are government in waiting. They are still waiting. I'm even a minister today. So the EFF is not an indicator of what's going to happen in the future. The EFF wish this GNU is going to last. This GNU is going to last. We are going to work. We're going to build South Africa. We can't take the EFF serious now talking about the GNU. How do they know the GNU is not going to last? They're outside. They don't know how we smile inside. They don't know how we deal with our issues inside.
How do you deal with the issues inside on political divergence?
Very, very respectfully. And we have taken a posture of we are going to where we differ. We go for consensus. So you can't have there's a contestation of ideas. You can't have all your ideas being accepted. Mina want abahambe. If it was up to me, abahambe, but I have to be realistic and accept that I didn't get 50+1. So I have to listen to other views there, not losing my view. But democracy should prevail, even in contestation of ideas.
So from Abahambe to Abahlali.
I will never leave Abahambe. Ke Abahambe, Abahlale, Abajima, Aba everything.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kayton Mackenzie. Over to you, Lula Mamacha.
Thank you very much, Samkele. I am joined by the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Solly Malatsi. Solly, a lot that the president put emphasis on technology, and I guess that your hands are going to be full.
Definitely, and it's also exciting because it means that there is a recognition of the strategic importance of the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies in terms of driving digitization in government to give members of the public a better experience when looking for government services digitally, but also to empower South Africans to be connected, because technology is the driving source of life. When either you are a young kid who wants to be connected to get learning material on it, or you are an entrepreneur who's looking to start their business and look for funding opportunities, and also to make sure that we remove, I like the president's emphasis on each and every department having a focus on removing legislative obstacles and regulations that have previously made it difficult for private and public partnerships to enter the market, so that we can drive inclusive growth. And our emphasis is going to be on driving the digital economy and making sure that it is the largest contributor to job creation in our country.
Do you think that you're going to make it in removing those barriers that have been there before? Because some of the things that he spoke about them before, but we will find out that we missed the deadlines.
Yeah, look, I think the difference now is that unlike in previous years, you now have a government of national unity that will be able to hold the president accountable internally. But if you also listen consistently to that emphasis, it shows that there is a recognition that in order to reduce the pressure that our fiscus is receiving, we need the economy to generate money, we need the economy to create jobs, so that the state can stop spending more money on state-owned enterprises and spend that money on social services to improve people's lives.
Thank you very much. That was the Minister of Communications and Digital Technology, Solly Malatsi. With that, back at the studio.
All right, thank you very much to my colleague there, Lula Mamacha, speaking to Solly Malatsi. Very interesting, Mzwandile, what we just heard from Solly Malatsi, stating that with everything that he heard from the president speaking extensively on technology, that he felt that his department is in fact strategic for the greater development of our economy.
And then, of course, if indeed they want to have this revolution in terms of the modernizing of the economy and everything that goes with communication, his department is very key, and let's see if that is being done. And interestingly, he says they also will hold each other inside accountable. Let's see that happen.
It's going to be interesting. I am salivating at the prospect of sinking my teeth deeper into the granular detail of this particular speech. You know, Nomfundo, you mentioned before we went down about the basket of essential food items that will be exempt from VAT. And I couldn't help but think in that moment, when the president talks about these large companies making huge profits, I remembered Neil Fruneman, the CEO of Sibanye, who got a 300 million rand pay from a bonus, including his bonuses. And then you talk about reducing the VAT, increasing the VAT basket. We've got to think bigger as a country.
A lot of detail will be quite crucial and key in how they move forward in crafting that which they've presented to us as a plan. This is a plan for the next 5 years. Yes, the president said they are going to a cabinet strategy where they'll flesh out all these things. I can't wait to see what exactly they'll be saying, particularly where we have questions.
Quite an important meeting that they'll be having. So they called it the medium-term development plan. That will be with all cabinet ministers. Honestly, very interesting one, but we'll keep a close look on that particular one, where they'll craft or refine some of the strategies. But that's where we leave it for this evening. Thank you very much for joining our special broadcast of the opening of Parliament address. We actually leave you with a montage, Sakina.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and of course a great job by the colleagues outside as well. We've braved the weather and all the other elements. We've made it, and this is how we say goodnight to you.